When you think about Black history, Arizona isn't at the top of the list of places that you would associate with that particular history, but you should. The sheer history that's contained at Fort Huachuca is enough to keep you occupied for years and years and years and years.
Well, it's an awful lot of fun talking to somebody like yourself who understands the history and can fill in little gaps in our conversation. And every time I talk to somebody, I learn something new. And I think, that's one of the reasons I want to come meet you.
I said to my family at the time, there's no way that I was going to remain here in the state of Arizona. Well, that was almost 30 years ago. And to be honest with you, I cannot think of a better place that I would rather live than right here in Sierra Vista.
Plus the richness of our history that we are discovering is just so vast.
Talking to other soldiers on this installation, and even Black personnel, I asked them the question, what do you know about the Buffalo Soldier? Have you ever heard of the Buffalo Soldier? And I get a resounding no.
But I have talked to several of the old-timers.
So that prompted me to do a lot of research into who these men were called the Buffalo Soldiers.
Fort Huachuca is significant. We like to call ourselves the real home of the Buffalo Soldier, simply because all 4 of the historic Buffalo Soldier units were stationed here at one point in their history. The remoteness of the location had something to do with it. Perhaps living in a town that had Black soldiers wasn't appealing to some communities. They kind of pushed them out here, and then they took on duties in the West.
I know the history of the Buffalo Soldier now, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, their accomplishments in helping to settle the West. They were former slaves because after the Civil War ended in 1865, 1866 is when Congress authorized the Army to enlist Black men in the regular peacetime Army. For the first time, this was probably the only paycheck these men had ever received.
Did I bum that jam off you, man? You gonna use that other jam? Thank you.
We try to tell the story of the Buffalo Soldier as honestly and as correctly as we possibly can.
Tell them as accurately as we can while at the same time being sensitive to the plight of the Native Americans and to the best of our ability not glorifying or glamorizing the life of the Buffalo Soldier, because there's nothing glorious about it.
No.
You know.
Can you imagine what they had to endure, back in the 1866? Not very much different than slavery, but look at the accomplishments we've achieved since 1866. I think they wanted to prove, too, that America was as much their country as anyone else's.
Buffalo soldiers at Fort Huachuca in the 1916, 17, 18 period, and all the way through the Mexican Revolutionary War period at the same time, were the Border Patrol. And they weren't being treated very well for protecting America against foreign invasion.
Doing my research, I found that if you want to know anything about Black Americans, look for the negative things. You will find very little to do with Blacks on a positive basis.
Black history is a shaming process, the way we teach it and the way we convey it to other people. Whenever you start talking to an 8-year-old child about the fact that everybody he's going to hear about in his past or her past was a slave, they immediately feel inferior. But if you begin talking about stories that are true, about people who were courageous, had fortitude, had bravery, and they were free, it changes the consciousness of that child from that day on. My mama always told me, if you're not nervous, then you don't care to succeed. So I feel like I'm taking flight here. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to Tucson. We'll be moving this way. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Welcome, Black pilots. Today we want to show you 500 years of history from an Afrocentric point of view, because we have been here for a long time. It's an amazing history that is often not told in our textbooks or to our children, because we were a free people. I am Dr. Michael Engs. With me is my business partner, Newman. Well, I've lived here in Tucson, coming from Virginia, as a veteran for 40 years now. I realized that there were a lot of people who were representing the Buffalo Soldiers very adequately, and I thought, why don't I go back further and see what I can find? And what I found is 500 years of history.
This is Esteban Park. This park is named after the first non-native to travel through the Southwest, who was actually a black man, a Moor. His name was Esteban. Folks play rugby, soccer, football here, but not too much is known about this park otherwise. Coming to the Southwest, I felt like an outsider, a transplant. I didn't know that there was history of my people in this area. And when I realized just how deep the history was, just how interesting some of these figures were and are, I just became fascinated. I am honored to have you all here because we are going to share information on the life and times of the first non-native to ever travel through the Southwest, who happened to be a black man, believe it or not.
Today, the story that we're going to do is about a woman named Maria Feliciana Arballo. She was a mulata libre, a free black woman. And this woman helped settle the state that we know as California.
At this stop, we're talking about Francisco Javier Marquez, one of the soldiers who would have come here. For my whole high school and college career, I worked for the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, dressed in costume, playing a character as if I was in the 1700s. Now I'm basically dressed in the same costume, playing a role that's somewhat different. The history we have in Arizona really emerged from the diaspora of African peoples from central and southern Mexico, not from the east coast of Virginia and the 13 colonies. If you look at history as being broad, then you have to think any experience that affects your way of thinking is a part of your history. So just because things happen in Mexico in 1519 doesn't mean I can't claim them as a part of my understanding of why I am the person I am today.
If it wasn't for the Buffalo Soldiers, we wouldn't be standing here in Arizona, in the Southwest Pier.
Wow, this is very enlightening, and I'm going to go back and share it with my family. As a matter of fact, I have Buffalo Soldiers paintings hanging in my house because I served in the military. I took a likening of the Buffalo Soldier, but I still know very little about it up until today.
Most of us know the history of the Tuskegee Airmen, that inspires us as pilots. However, prior to the Tuskegee Airmen, there were people that made history that brought them to be where they are.
Imagine what her thoughts were or would be about the accomplishments of her descendants.
It just makes you feel good to be a member of the human race. We see the good, the bad, and the ugly of the path that we've traveled. The more details we know like this,
you all are going to hold hands here.
It fills out your knowledge base. It makes you a happier, prouder human being, I'll say.
Read stories like I have that make us proud. We deserve that. We deserve a history that gives us stature. And we have that history buried here in the Southwest, within these walls.